Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to the Chasing Giants podcast, live from the FAE Midwest Sportsman's Classic in Shipshewana, Indiana. Don, we have a huge crowd here tonight that's got a bunch of questions, but you just got blindsided, so tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I had never seen that video you guys just seen, so it's going to be tough to get me too fired up tonight after watching that, I can tell you that.
So some of this is going to make the podcast, some of it isn't. We're going to go ahead and talk about it a little bit. So after the Babe video came out, how can you not be emotionally drawn to do something after watching that story and seeing how just the story of a deer or a podcast can really challenge someone's faith, make us want to be better people, make us want to serve our communities. But we as a board of Lester's Feet just, felt compelled that we need to do more. We're helping a lot of families with sick kids, but this podcast has given us such a blessing and platform to connect like-minded people that want to serve Christ, that we want to make a difference in the communities. So we approached Andrea before we told you about it and asked her and her husband Corey if they would be okay with it, and they said yes. And so we decided to start the Andrea Hamilton Fund. And I told you that, but that's all you knew. Shortly after we decided to start the fund, I started texting Joe Miles and Nick Carpenter from Brenton Firearms and Jay Gingrich and all the guys that are here, and they absolutely were all in to create this. But the pivotal part of this was two guys that really stepped up. Not just donating product, but donating time and travel, and that was Wes Delks and Austin Razor. Joe Miles at Osseo, Brenton Firearms, Nick Carpenter, Jay Gingrich from Gingrich Tree Farms, our folks at Vortex, our folks at Matthews. Obviously, real world, we got some connections there. Yeah. So I want to thank all of them, but the whole goal of this is obviously Andrea and Corey have a rough road ahead of them. We want them to just know that you guys are constantly asking us how you all can help. There's now a fund that you guys can donate to that is there if they need it. But the cool thing about this is Andrea, who's been wanting to join the board for so long, can, when she's done, go find other families that have dealt with what she has and have the financial means to go help them. That's a pretty cool story.
Yeah, it is. I don't even know where to start because I was just blindsided. I didn't see any of this coming until you guys just seen it. I don't think they're going to get me fired up tonight, but they may say a tear or two.
I tear up every time I watch the story. When Corey was standing behind the Suburban and told her, "I love you," it brings back thoughts of when we got the phone call that my wife had cancer and us going through that. So keep them in your prayers. How cool is it that deer hunting can serve a bigger calling in the Lord's kingdom for stuff like this, that we can get together and rally around families, whether it's sick children or families that have cancer or whatever's going on. How cool is it that deer hunting brings that platform together?
Well, when we when we started the podcast, we wanted to do more than just educate people about deer. We wanted to use our platform, to help others, to spread the good news about Jesus Christ. And I never seen it get into this.
Well, we appreciate everybody's support. We're going to go ahead and move forward with the program. So I need everybody who's got a question to start staging up over here on the right. I have a couple questions that people were too shy to step up here, but I know we got a couple really good friends here, and I hate to call people out, but my good friend the Metzgers are over here, and last time we were here, Susanna, I made her come up on stage. I'm not going to do that today, but Lamar pulled me aside earlier, and since you have two daughters and I have two daughters, He wants to know if we can interview any future boyfriend candidates before they start calling on Susanna, since we've already been through it, and they have to get through our approval process first.
She's going to be an old maid, isn't she?
And then we can't forget our buddies over here, Ray, Naden, and Hap, sitting there right in between them, and so many of our friends. We look out across this audience. It's good to have people here that have supported us all. But we have a Chasing Giants row out in the trade show hall. If these guys are going to walk up and down and see all of the people that fall underneath of the Chasing Giants family when they go out to the show.
Yeah, they're all grouped together. I started down that aisle this afternoon, and it probably took me 2 hours to move 100 feet.
Yep.
Just talking to everybody that I knew that came by. And, the support for my family has just been overwhelming, and from the sponsors, but also for you folks that have been praying for us. And I just appreciate that more than I can say.
So tomorrow night, this is being recorded on Thursday. Tomorrow night, we talked about this on the podcast last night, and it's probably the most humbling experience I've ever been asked to be a part of. I think I've thought about this a lot. We talked last week that we said this was a monumental thing to have the men that's going to be on this stage, minus me, about what they've done for the deer hunting community. And I think it's really important that I look across this crowd today and see the age demographic, because there's a lot of young people in here. A lot of young people that have come up in my generation where we grew up that hunting was the entertainment side. Mm-hmm. And the people that are going to be on this stage tomorrow are the pioneers in really understanding what mature bucks do. When you look at the Wenzel brothers and Bobby, those guys were the ones that figured it out. You and Joe came later and figured out how to use that knowledge to either manipulate the property to enhance that opportunity, or like Joe does in who knows where in the world with swamp bucks and everything else, taking that knowledge and adapting it to that topography or that terrain. Mm-hmm. Having all of you all on stage for this generation, I think this is a bold statement. This is the most pivotal night in not only the outdoor community, but the industry, to focus back on the fundamentals of this sport. And for the sake of Gene and Barry and Bobby, I hope that they understand, and this crowd here tomorrow gives them kind of a sense of accomplishment about what they've done to the entire sport of deer hunting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even consider myself worthy to be on the same stage with these guys. When I was a teenager, I was writing handwritten letters to Gene Wenzel, and he would reply every time with a handwritten letter. And I'm 60 today, we're talking 40 plus years ago that I've been looking up to him. Alan Foster is going to be on the stage tomorrow, who's a mentor of mine that kind of took me under his wing about that same time. And I say all the time that Al shaved 10 years off the learning curve for me. So there's literally 3 of the 6 guys on that stage I knew when I was a teenager and looked up to them because of their accomplishments, and they taught me a lot on the road to the success that I've had. And then you throw in Bobby Worthington. I met him years later, but I've said many times, if I was forced to name the best deer hunter in North America, Bobby would have to be right up there at the top.
Yeah.
If you look at what he's done and where he's done it, living in East Tennessee. He wasn't living in Iowa or Illinois. This guy lives in East Tennessee in the mountains, and I think he's had 8 bucks featured in North American Whitetail. And then you throw in Joe Miles. I mean, this guy, who stacks up more big bucks in one season, season after season after season, than Joe Miles? So I'm not sure how I got in that group, but I'm sure honored to be sitting at the table with him tomorrow night.
Yours is a whole lot easier to figure out than me, buddy.
I don't know about that. But
I just decided, I told them I'd bring the Little Debbies, and they told me that I could come if I had snack cakes for everybody. All right, so bring your questions up. We're ready for them. Don't make me ad-lib this anymore. I need a first question to come up. The awkward pause is very difficult for video great editor Steve Shields to do it. By the way, you're editing this week's copy. Thank you. All right, step up here to the microphone, and We might have a little bit of feedback, so just guard your ears here a little bit. I'll feather it out as I can.
If Hunter Biden made you an irresistible offer, like give you a big chunk of money and an opportunity to be the lead Illinois state wildlife manager, would you go and consult on his 4,000-acre farm that he bought with the money that he made from Ukraine, and he wants you to plan around his windmills and solar panels?
Well, that's right out of the gate. Well done. First question of the night.
Wow.
What part do you answer of that? Would you go to work? Okay, so let's spin this question and out of all the politics there. If somebody offered you a stupid amount of money at this point in your life, would you go be the head of the DNR of Illinois? That's a good question, actually.
Well, I would absolutely be the head of any DNR because I have no doubt that I can improve the deer hunting in every state, including Iowa. But the problem would be the politics behind it. You know, you got to get things passed through the legislature. But if I was king of DNR, I guarantee you I could improve any state out there. If I had to take dirty money from Hunter Biden,
we'd work for free.
The thing of it is, I don't think most people understand how much I love this country.
Yeah.
Because this country has allowed me to do what I've done with my life, and it couldn't have happened anywhere else. If I'd have been born in any other country in the world, I could not have done what I've done. And to see what's happening in this country just breaks my heart, because I look out at all these young people, and I know that many of these young people are not going to have the opportunity that I had because of what's happened politically. I wouldn't take the dirty money, just like I wouldn't take the money from windmills or solar. You know, I've been driving around Michigan the past 2 days consulting, and I see these solar fields everywhere. And it's nothing but dirty money. The government is subsidizing this basically so that dirty politicians can take money under the table back.
Yeah.
And this country means more to me than money. I'm living comfortably today. I don't need dirty money.
You've already lost enough money in the hunting industry. You don't need to worry about that.
My mouth has already cost me more money than Hunter Biden's made from Ukraine.
All right, next question. Do you want to introduce this gentleman?
Yeah, this is Drew Peterson. He lives in California, a great Christian man that I consulted on a property for Drew in Michigan a few years ago. And then yesterday I was back for a follow-up visit. And he wants to share a little bit of his story of why he had me back to the property. But Drew represents the average client, I guess, for me, because, you know, when I see an email come in from Drew, I think of it as an email from a friend. He's got a question, but I've met him, I know him, I've been to his place, we've walked through the woods together. I know his heart and his values, which I totally respect. So I'll let him take it from here.
Well, thanks, Don. I first want to thank you and Terry for those 2 videos. They were amazing, and you just bring to focus for all of us, you know, what one thing God can't take from us, and that's our free will to choose Him first, to put His will first in our lives.
Amen.
And appreciate, you know, two famous deer hunters that do that every week. So thank you. So in my occupation, detail is important, like Joe Miles pointed out. But I am not an expert in deer hunting or arranging my farm to facilitate hunting. So I went to Don and I asked for help, and he gave me a great plan 6 years ago, and I went and did everything. Did the whole plan, put it together, and boy, my brother and a couple of my sons were really excited about it. My wife was furious at how much I spent on those on those little projects, but we had a great time, and it brought our family together. But unfortunately, I didn't get to the article Don wrote about mistakes that guys like me make, and that's trying to do too much. And, you know, Don and Terry have mentioned the buck merry-go-round, and, you know, going out and just doing these extra projects that just seem to be great because you read about them, you see them on podcasts and magazines and on the whiteboard. And I decided to go out and just do these extra projects, and that's intrusion, and that's all kinds of issues. And I wound up putting switchgrass and doing a timber stand improvement, and suddenly enlarged the sanctuary to a point where Don just said, "What the heck, you just changed the whole thing." Now I'm going through the sanctuary to get to my hunting blinds because I expanded it with these smart projects. So anyway, you know, in my occupation, I fix bones for a living. And, you know, one of the things we always say is, you know, do no harm, but the enemy of good is better. And I think that's exactly the point, you know, keep it simple, the KISS principle. So you might want to expand on that, Don, but I blew it. I did too much, and I sat back, and the other day Don came over, and we're going to keep it simple this time. Stick to the plan.
Well, thanks, Drew. Appreciate
yeah, sure.
your kind
you
words.
You can cut that all out, Terry, if you want. But
That's perfect.
No, I appreciate your willingness to get in front of this crowd and share that, because, you know, there's more than one way to kill big deer. There's more than one way to set up a property. But there's some fundamental principles that need to be in place at all times. And I know of at least one consultant out there that just hammers away at basically anything that I put out there. And the idea that one big sanctuary don't work, big food plots don't work. Well, I would challenge him to match the record to what I've done on 120 acres, because just this past fall, I had 5 bucks over 170 inches all fall on my 120 acres. And we shot Babe and we shot one other buck, but there's still 5 more up-and-comers that are over 160. And, you know, I've got one big sanctuary. There's no stands within the sanctuary. There's no food plots within the sanctuary. There's no trail cameras within the sanctuary. That sanctuary is for the deer. It's for them to feel safe. And I tell my clients all the time, if you want to kill big deer consistently, year after year after year, you absolutely have got to hunt them on the properties where they bed, where they spend their daylight hours. And every time I go to a property to consult, the first thing I'm looking for is, what do we have to do to get the bucks in that neighborhood to bed right here on this property? Because if we get them bedded on that property and then we leave the sanctuary alone, they're going to come back day after day after day, and we will eventually get them killed somewhere on the edge of that sanctuary. But we go into that sanctuary and we bump that buck one time and he runs off, it's over. It's over for the season. You're done with that buck. And sometimes, Drew, you're not the only one that's made that mistake. I've got a lot of clients that didn't like my plan for their property because it was too simple. It can't be that easy. They want some, you know, Einstein type formula drawn out for their property, and that's not what it takes. It takes a good dose of common sense and a handful of core principles. And number one, we got to get that buck bedded there day after day after day. If he's bedded there, you will kill him. And we'll have the stands in the right place to kill him. But number one, we got to get him bedded there before you can kill him. So, you know, hats off to you, Drew, for, you know, being open-minded enough to realize that your first approach wasn't the right approach. Let's take a step back and let's try it again.
Yep. Thank you. All right, we got another question.
Yeah, I guess it's more of a comment. My name's Darren Schrock from Elkhart County. I was able to shoot a buck of a lifetime about 10 years ago on the family farm, and it was a real privilege. It was a time where I was in the stands, saw the biggest buck that I'd ever seen in my life, but had family commitments for the next 2 weeks. I did not get the buck that evening and had family obligations for 2 weeks, completed everything that was needed to be done, and then had an opportunity and actually shot the buck. And it was a time of selflessness that I found over the 40 years that I've hunted, that's the times that I'm blessed and have always been able to harvest bigger deer. I just wanted to see if you wanted to comment to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the sayings that Terry and I have is, if you want to be blessed, be a blessing. If you bless someone else somehow, that doesn't mean that you're going to bless somebody else and God's going to rain $100 bills out of the sky in your yard. But it might just be the feeling in your heart of helping that person. If you want to be blessed, be a blessing. And the other thing we preach is getting your priorities in order. And guys, I'm telling you that 30 years ago, I could not sit up here and preach that because my priorities were not in order. They are today, and I'm glad I got them in order. And I just encourage young people, take a look at your priorities and get them in order if they're not. Use me as an example of how not to do things when I was younger. I got my life in order later. You don't have to wait till you're later. Get them in order today.
All right, well, we're waiting on the next person to come up and ask a question. They're walking up this way now. Levi from Wisconsin wants to know why some bucks have longer tines than others.
It's all genetic. Yep.
They're back there giggling. I think they set up a buddy of theirs that rode in a car over here with them. So, all right, you got a question? Come on up here. Take the awkward pauses out. You're up. Go. Just grab the mic.
Hello,
He's got a Chasing Giants T-shirt on for us.
Hello, my name's Jeff Paldy. I'm from Northwest Ohio. I have property down in Southeast Ohio. It's a pretty remote property. And my question, well, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys for inspiring us to hunt deer, but not only hunt deer, to be better humans, be closer to God. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it inspires us all. And I just want to remind you guys of that. But the other thing is, my question really surrounds about how smart deer are and how smart can they get. And being my property's really remote, we drive in, we come in on a stone road that doesn't get traveled very far, very long. And usually my neighbor's down there the same time in the weekend. He drives us side by side into his property, which maybe it'd help me out, but doesn't seem like it helps me out. It just seems like they would know we're there. So first part of the question is there things that I can do to help that? How smart are the deer? And the second part of the question is, what examples do you have of the smartest thing you've seen deer do?
Well, you share a perfect example. You come in on that gravel road and the deer are not used to much traffic. The fact that you don't live close to that property means those deer do not become accustomed to I mean, if your house was on that gravel road, you'd be driving on it every day if there was other houses. But they pick up on that stuff, no doubt about it. As far as what you can do about it, your access. Instead of driving in on that gravel road, maybe you take a quiet cat bike or something and park a mile or more away. Stand access is everything. There's two things to make a good stand. One's good access, and the other is being able to hunt it with a wind direction, a specific wind direction. And that wind direction, once you're in the stand, you have to be able to use that same wind direction to access that stand without being detected. So what was the last part of the question? Smartest thing I've seen a deer do. Huh. Well, that's a good question. I'll have to think about that one. Well, I've seen them do a lot of smart things because, most mature bucks have avoided hunters for a minimum of 5 seasons. I've seen them bed out in the middle of a wide open cornfield, a picked cornfield, to avoid hunting pressure, turning nocturnal. I mean, that's pretty smart. They know when to move or move at midday. Some of the places I've seen bucks bed behind an old, I actually ran a buck one time out of an old lady's barn. There was a little bit of brush behind her barn, and I just had a feeling there was a waterway that ran up behind that barn, and I just had a feeling that behind that barn would be a good place for a big old buck. This was back whenever I was still gun hunting, so it was back when I was in my 20s. Well, I came around, I got permission from the old lady, and I came around the corner of her barn, and a buck ran out of her barn. There was a big sliding door on the back that was open, and a buck ran out of that as I came around the corner. And I shot at him running away, missed him. Came back the next day, and that same buck was there again behind that lady's barn. Runs off, I didn't get a good shot. He ran away, and I had some brush in the way and didn't get a good shot. I came back the third day, that buck was not there. With most mature bucks, you get one opportunity. Very seldom do you get two. That's the case I got two. That's the only time I can ever remember where I got two chances at a buck because he came back to the same spot the next day. So I've seen him do a lot of smart things. That's just a couple of them.
Can you imagine living your whole life in fear of survival like a deer? It's no wonder they don't live very long. The anxiety that they have, that they're always, something's wrong. They see them come out of the woods in the food plot and they're bobbing their head, always looking around.
Yep.
I'm glad salvation gives us the assurance we don't have to live with that kind of anxiety every day. That's for sure. All right, let's have another one.
Appreciate you guys coming out here. I'm Thomas from Wisconsin, central Wisconsin. A lot of young guys here. Is there any way you could explain to us how a mature buck plays the wind different than a young buck or a doe? I've heard guys talk about finding a bed and getting down in the bed and looking around at the level they're on and seeing what that deer is seeing in that bed and determining on whether it's a mature buck bed or not. It's an interesting concept. Wondering if you've got some thoughts on it.
Well, there's all kinds of garbage out there on the internet, so people make up all kinds of things to make it more complicated or make themselves look smarter than they really are. And I'm not saying I'm smarter than they are, but as far as playing the wind, I mean, we could sit here until midnight and talk about playing the wind, but a mature buck does not want to get up and give up the wind. And I think the big mistake a lot of hunters make, they think they're in their stand, they're sitting in front of a deer trail. They want the wind to be blowing from the deer trail to them, blowing their scent the opposite direction. Well, for a buck to walk down that trail, that's not really doing him any good. I mean, he's not able to detect danger in front of him. But if he's walking down that trail and he's got a wind quartering into his nose, if he's going to bed or if he's going to feed, whichever, in this direction, and he's got a wind quartering in that direction as he's going, well, that allows us as a hunter to get off to this side of the trail, and that wind, our scent, is blowing towards that deer, but back over to the side of that deer. You got to give him a wind that he's comfortable with, and you got to find some kind of a point along his travel route where he gives it up just a little bit. It may be a turn in the trail or something like that, but you can't expect him to just waltz around with the wind at his tail and commit suicide.
Yeah, I got it all figured out now.
Well, you better make a video because you'll be famous.
Well, I mean, I have not shot a buck since back surgery because I can't bend over anymore. So if I could go find a deer bed and bend over so that I could see eye level, I'm sure I would have shot a buck in the last year. Got it all figured out. Thank you for that question. I'm going to go.
I don't think anybody here wants to see Terry bend over, do you?
Hey, I had somebody today come up to the booth and say, I thought you'd be a lot fatter than you are.
I was there when it happened. I was there when it happened.
I think that's a compliment.
Well, I would take it as a compliment.
Well, I'll go find some little Debbies. All right, who's got a question? Oh, here we go.
Hey Don, it's Eli here. I'm from Iowa, and I had a question here. Back on episode, I think it was 196, you and Terry were talking about Illinois used to be so good back in the day that I think you guys said when the rifle season opened up and then people get together in the town, local bars, whatever, talking about the bucks in the back of the truck. And if you didn't have a 170-inch buck in the bed of your truck, it wasn't worth walking up taking a look. Do you think most of that comes from crossbows and trail cameras now, or do you think it's something different?
I think there's a lot of factors, and I think it starts with the DNR regulations. I think the insurance lobby had a big impact on the number of deer that were shot. I'm not going to blame it on trail cameras or crossbows or expandable broadheads. I think everything had a little bit of an impact. You know, I remember whenever I started bow hunting, and I think the reason that I differ in opinion on some of these things is because I grew up in a different time. The Wentzels and Alan Foster were my mentors, and they instilled hunting ethics into me. We didn't even talk about shooting deer past 25 yards. I mean, if you can't get them within 20 yards, you don't deserve to have a deer. That's the way we looked at it back in those days. Now, our equipment was not near as refined as today. So making a 40-yard shot back then would be about like making an 80-yard shot today. Right. So it's not really comparing, apples to apples. But there's just a whole list of factors that have, over the last 25 years, have, one thing after another has resulted in the deterioration of deer herds, not only in Illinois, but I think a lot of other states as well. I think the whole CWD hysteria by some biologists plays into that also. So there's a whole host of factors.
We don't necessarily remember every word we say on the podcast. A lot of people ask those kind of questions, but sometimes we don't remember what we said last week's on episode. But I hope we didn't say in the bar. I don't remember saying that. But I can tell you from the years of like 1996, 7, 8 through 2010, 11, we would be at a hotel in Eastern Illinois, and if a guy didn't have above a 170 in the back of his truck, it wasn't a big deal. That's how many booners were killed in Illinois back then. I mean, literally, if we saw somebody with a 150 back then, it was, okay, great buck, congratulations, But nobody got excited unless that's how good it was. And I think the pivotal moment was the big EHD breakout in 2012, and then all of these new regulations compounded on a deer herd just getting decimated. We've talked about it in 2012. We lost probably 80% of the herd in some places. Then I was even still as a non-resident allowed to kill 2 bucks. That was just a shot in the wrong direction at its all-time low when they should have gone in and just shut down hunting for a while for the sake of the herd. So there's a lot of different things but I don't think either one of us were at a bar talking about, I hope not anyway. If we did say that, we need to retract that off of that episode.
I don't think we said that.
Okay. All right, we got another one. Come over here and get closer, guys, so we don't have to wait as long to get to the next question. It'll save a little bit of time in post-production.
My name's Corey Hutchman. I'm from Northeast Missouri. I have 2 questions. My first is, I have a strip of miscanthus, okay, and it's covering like a 1-acre food plot with an orchard. And then a couple hills over, about 100, 125 yards, is my big grain food plot. And I was curious, instead of going on with miscanthus, because it'd be a lot, if what you thought about putting in switchgrass around that to screen it.
Without seeing it, it's really hard to say. I mean,
because it's big ag out around it, so it's all wide open.
Well, screening sounds like it's definitely needed. I would much rather see miscanthus used as screening than switchgrass, or a combination of both. I think with miscanthus, you can you can use a whole lot narrower strip and get a lot better job than with switchgrass. I
didn't know on a softer edge deer coming through
to
get to the food plot from the sanctuary.
I think the whole soft edge, diversity pockets, and some of those catchphrases are just nonsense to get you to watch a video.
Garbage.
And
garbage.
My second question was, I was curious. I thought I heard you guys talk about Milo, testing Milo. I didn't know if you would delve into that.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
this is a perfect time. By the way, I don't know where you got that hat, but that's
old school.
That is. We haven't seen those hats for a long time. It's signed. Oh wow.
Yeah. Okay, we can do that. Grain sorghum. Yeah, we tested some grain sorghum last year on several different properties. We're going to have it available for
pilot program.
Pilot program. There you go. This year, the benefits of grain sorghum over other grains is that the deer don't browse it when it's young. So when that stuff's just coming out of the ground and before it puts the grain on, the deer don't browse it. So places where soybeans and corn won't work, you can grow grain sorghum and get away with it. On my farm, I planted it. We had 3 different varieties we was testing this year. I planted it, and the deer barely touched it. And I mowed it down just this week. Getting ready to no-till soybeans into that plot this year. I won't plant it again on my farm because with all the NutriCrave corn, the Gen 2 soybeans, the Deadly Dozen, the clover and chicory, and everything else I had, I still have NutriCrave corn today, and those deer are hitting it, and I still have soybeans today. So those are 2 grains that are better than grain sorghum that I've still got on my farm, which the deer prefer. But if you're in a situation where you got so many deer that you can't get away with corn and soybeans, it's definitely an option.
So we tested 3 different varieties in, I believe, 4 states. At least 3. I think it was 4. So we will release one of those for a pilot program this coming year based on the initial testing that we did. All right, sir. It should be on.
Hey, guys. Zach from Macon, Illinois. God bless you guys and your families. Thank you for being here. I had sent you guys a message, wanted to get your perspective on this double brood of cicadas that's in the news coming up. And if you've seen any damage to those young fruit trees from any insects before, if you think it'll be a problem this year.
I've got that question more in the last 2 weeks than probably any other question. I have no idea what we're in for as far as the insects this summer. I've seen a lot of damage from Japanese beetles in the past on fruit trees, but never the cicada. But as far as what I'm going to do, I've got about 125 more fruit trees going in on my place this spring, and I'm going to keep an eye on it. And if I need to, I'll spray them with Liquid 7 or something like that. But I'm not going to let that stop me from, my habitat projects and my fruit trees. When you get to be 60 years old, you don't have years to waste. You need to get trees in the ground if you're ever going to enjoy the fruit from them. So it's not going to stop me. But
you're not going to believe what the government's telling you?
I love my country more than I can say, but I can't stand my government.
Great question. Thank you. We've gotten that one a lot lately.
Yeah.
My name is Reagan Niles from Sauk County, Wisconsin. I have kind of 2 questions. One, Don says scent products are garbage, I guess. Where I live, it's hilly, and I wondered if he'd be more, would more into using scent products if the swirling winds and stuff in the hills or what?
No. So you make a good point that hilly country is a lot more difficult to hunt because of the wind swirls and things like that. You don't get a true wind like you do in flatter, more open country. But, back in the day, I did everything you possibly could for scent control, everything. I mean, I even took the chlorophyll pills to cut down on body odor. I carried a pee bottle with me to pee in the stand, sprayed down, changed clothes in the freezing cold outside my truck. You name it, I did it. And guess what? The deer still smelled me. And that's not going to change no matter if you're in hill country or flat country. If they're going to smell you, they're going to smell you. It's a matter of learning how the wind currents work at an exact stand location. Not necessarily your property, but an exact tree. If you're in this tree, and so what I do is I've got one of those wind socks at my house. So when I leave my house, the wind's out of the south, say, I've got a stand I'm planning to go to that works for a south wind. Well, I might get to that stand for the first time, and I find out that south wind is not doing what I thought it would. And maybe it could even be out of the north at that stand. And I'm noting that. So I've got to realize with each stand there is an ideal wind, but that wind may be different than what I think it should be. And you just got to make note of that. So every time you put up a new stand, you got to learn what the wind currents do at that exact location. And hill country makes it way tougher than flat country.
The other thing, if you stop by Bobby's booth and talk to him, there's a difference in going in hill country and finding buck sign and say, I have to hunt that bottom where that buck is, versus what can I do along that buck's travel route to get into a position where the wind isn't going to affect me, or with plans like we put together, how can we adapt the habitat to not have to go into the bottom? I don't care where the current buck sign is. We're going to move the buck sign to where we want it, where we can have access to it. So I think too many hunters worry about a rub that's down in a holler somewhere that is impossible to get down in there without winding something. Try to change your habitat or find another place on that buck's route where you won't have the wind swirling as bad. Get up top.
And I was going to ask, last year was with the drought, I know you said on the podcast that it wasn't as good a growing year for antlers and such, but maybe next year this year you think we'll see a lot more antler growth if we get good growing season?
I sure hope so, and it's setting up to be an early spring. One thing that you folks may have noticed, I take note of it every spring, is all the skunks that get hit on the ground, on the roads. Lately, there's been skunks hit on the road everywhere. Typically, that doesn't happen until March. March is when I expect to see skunks hit on the road everywhere. I'm seeing it now a full 2 weeks before March. Now, what those skunks are doing is it's breeding season for them. The male skunks are running up and down the road trying to find females, and they're getting hit. And I thought this is the first time in my life that I've ever seen this many skunks hit in February. It's usually March when that happens. So I'm predicting an early spring based on that.
But after a dismal antler growing season, so if you look at a statistic analysis, if everything was down and we have a normal year, we could see a dramatic bounce back, not just because of how low it was this year. The other thing that I'm really curious about, I know a guy that's after shed season that's going to do some analysis, but the drought, raise your hand if you saw more bucks broken up this year. Did anybody see more bucks with broken antlers this year? So I have a friend that's actually going to send in samples, and they're going to check the calcium level from this last year during the drought, and to see if he can tell a difference. And with this year versus last year or past sheds that he found, if a calcium deficiency due to a drought or a diet had something to play in the brittleness of antlers. It's going to be pretty interesting when he gets it done.
It'd be real interesting if he can do it with the same buck. If he's got multiple sheds from the same buck on different years.
That's the goal. We just got to find those antlers. So I think it'll be interesting if we can pull it off.
Okay, Josh here I make my home here in northern Indiana. Got a question for Don. In Whitetail Life, I'm not sure which issue, you mentioned you'd rather own 6 40-acre parcels than one 240-acre parcel. Then you go and buy adjoining 40-acre property to your property. Why did you do that instead of buying a separate 40-acre property?
Well, there's a long story behind it, and there's a good reason. So the 40 that I bought was part of a larger farm, probably 300 acres or so. And I'd always leased that property. And the landowner passed away, and I lost the lease. And some other guys came in and started hunting. They was hunting right next to me. And they were just hammering the bucks. They killed 3 bucks in the first 30 days of season, indiscriminately. They were going to be there. the entire season. I had a camera where these guys were coming in to hunt, and they were passing this camera.
Waving.
Without consideration to the wind, without consideration to anything. They were going to absolutely destroy my property. And so I went to the farmer who passed away. I went to his son, and I offered to trade a piece of tillable acres, 40 acres, for the woods and the creek, the rough ground that was part of their farm. And he agreed to trade and basically saved my farm. If it wouldn't have been for that 40, me getting that 40, I'd be ruined today. So it was critical for me to get that 40 to make my farm even better than it was, but to save it from being totally destroyed.
They would have brought every friend that they had to keep hunting that every day just to say we were hunting your property line. I mean,
I think they were pretty proud of it. They actually drug a couple of those bucks past my trail camera and waved at the cameras they're doing it and things like that. So I got the last laugh, though.
I'm sure they were Democrats.
Are you ready for me?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. I'll have more commentary as you go.
I'm Damon from Paris Crossing, Indiana. Just want to explain something that happened and let you comment on it. Recently, we had snow in southern Indiana, and a couple, 3 weeks ago, and I decided that the last day when I knew it was going to melt that I would take a walk through my property to find out where deer activity was and where the beds were and such. They kind of surprised me. I had my place logged a few years back, probably about 4 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I had them to log this holler really heavy because I wanted the deer to use it a lot and I knew it would grow up thick. Well, that very fall, deer were using that like crazy, bedding in it because there was a lot of weeds and stuff growing up in there, horse weeds. They were using it. I jumped a lot of bucks in there after season that fall. I would go over there to my food plot and bucks would jump up and run out, and I seen them. Well, the next year they used it more, and I stayed away from it. But this time during the snow, when I went over there, I didn't hardly see that much deer sign. But the saplings had grown up to where they were above my head now, and you couldn't see through it. And I walked through there, and there wasn't too many beds, maybe one or two here or there. I walked on into my other woods where it had been cut, but not very hard. You could still see through that. And that's where the deer beds were. And it surprised me because they bedded in a place where they could see very well, but they didn't bed in that thick cover during that snow. And something else to go along with that, years ago, my uncle had a field cleared, and there's bulldoze piles over there in that place where the timber was, where you could see through it. And the deer loved to bed on top of those bulldoze piles. That's where their beds were, on top of that snow. Mm-hmm. So it was a flat land over there, and they got on top of there where they could see better. And I just wondered if you've ever, I know you live in flat country, have you ever piled up some dirt in your edges to let bucks bed on it, or thought about that? So
I've never done it, but I have no doubt it works. You know, it works in a swamp. You got a little rise that's dry, they'll bed there. It'll also work in a native grass field, a switchgrass field. Bucks will bed on a little rise. I got a spot in my switchgrass field where the bucks like to bed. It's not on top of the rise, but it's on a side slope. But if they definitely want an escape route, and they definitely want to use their eyes as well as their nose when they bed. So, you know, if it gets super thick, it's probably a matter of they can't use their eyes to the degree that they would prefer.
I got a question. Was the thick area, was there still snow on the ground in the thick area that you didn't see much bed in? Did the open area have as much snow on it as the thick area? So it wasn't that they were on a... Right. Because a lot of times you'll see, especially when it's that cold, they'll get on a south-facing hillside, even if it's open, just to stay warm. It was all flat. Interesting.
Hey, my question is, I'm in central Michigan, and so we get pretty hard winters, but trying to get a crop to last them through the winter. I know you use your NutriCrave corn, but I was also thinking of sugar beets, seeing what you thought of that to get them through.
Well, the sugar beets are probably, from my experience, sugar beets are part of plot topper and deadly dozen. That's one of the first plants they pick out and eat. And I think that as soon as you planted that in the late summer, early fall, I think they would demolish it right out of the gate, and it would probably never get to the point where it would grow the beet itself, unless you was planting a large ag field, and I doubt that you're thinking that big.
Your purple top turnips will be one of your last. And from what we've learned with the tissue analysis of it, it's the nitrate level drops in that plant later than anything else in that blend, so it doesn't become desirable or tractable or palatable, however you want to say it. But that's why you go out in all of our deadly dozen plant plots right now, and most of it is picked clean, except you'll still have bulbs of purple top turnips sitting out there. And just now, because of the cold weather, those nitrate levels have dropped in it, and then you can, the last couple weekends on land consulting, I've taken a knife and eaten a bite of it, and it's not bitter anymore. It's got a sweetness taste to it. So having diversity in that blend is what's going to get you through the most browse pressure, because at different points in time they're going to want different things, versus having every deer within 2 miles eating on that one variety at one time, and then you'll lose the whole field to browse. The variety in a blend is going to be the key for that type of.
Okay. One last question is, you say number one thing, you got to get the bucks to bed on your property to get them. Do you have any advice how to get them to do that with your property?
Number one is freedom of human intrusion. That's the hardest message for me to get across, is that it don't cost you a penny, and it don't even take a minute of your time. Just stay off. If you do nothing else, just stay off. But when you create good bedding cover and then you stay off, well, that just magnifies it. It makes it even better. So thick cover, total freedom of human intrusion. I don't think most deer hunters understand how little human intrusion it takes to bump most mature bucks.
All right, we got time for 2, maybe 3 questions. And Ray or Aiden have not come up to ask a question yet. I'm a little disappointed.
Somebody was supposed to stump me and get me fired up, and I haven't heard anything, even attempt at that yet. Yeah. So
Aiden's going to come up and tell us how he fixes turkey at Thanksgiving dinner. All right, come on. We got just time for a couple more. Boy, this is a quiet crowd. Here comes a couple. Step right up.
My name is Joe. I'm from this area. I was just wondering, when you went to or shot Babe, what wind did you have at that moment that you were hunting?
Hey, it was northwest. So he was coming out with a quartering. When I shot him, that wind was quartering into his nose.
It was. Yep. So what made him go the other direction the other time? Was it different?
Well, he was actually, then he was going straight into the wind. It was straight into his nose.
So he had the wind on his back for a little bit there, or to his
no,
side?
he came out with a quartering nose wind. And then he turned right into that wind and had a straight nose wind.
So when he came out and you shot him, he still had it quartering too?
Well, when he came out, it was quartering to him. Then he turned and came towards me, and it was basically a crosswind. But then when he turned, it became a quartering nose wind again.
So as he was going, he left the switch, but he was going into the sanctuary. When you saw him turn, he was going into the sanctuary. It was back to a quartering into his nose as he's entering the sanctuary. So he knew what was in front of him.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding east wind. The way if I listen to the podcast, I try to every week. So the way I understand, you say one of your best winds is an east wind. Can you explain why that is? And my second question was, what is the craziest sponsor offers you guys have had?
Where's Joe Miles at?
Well, the reason that, so my farm sets up good for an east wind. You know, other properties set up better for other wind directions. Mine just happens to set up good for an east wind because an east wind allows me to hunt the backside of my sanctuary. And if I'm back there with an east wind early in the rut, all day long there's going to be bucks running that edge because they can smell everything that's in that sanctuary. The reason I really like east winds is east winds almost always come with a weather front. It's not like you wake up tomorrow and the wind's out of the east. If it's out of the east tomorrow, it's because there's a weather front coming through, and that gets the deer on their feet.
A lot of times a cold front in October.
Yep. So Terry, I'm going to let you handle the second one about our craziest sponsor offer.
Well, I think we talked about this a couple. I don't know how long
it was a while back.
It was when Joe was on the podcast. There was a, how do I say this?
That's
politely?
why I passed it to you, so you can come up with it.
There was a male grooming tool for personal hygiene and unmentionable places that they wanted us to talk about. But I forgot about the other one. The other one that was kind of funny was long underwear that had pouches all over it. So you could put hot hand pouches just all over your whole body in all these little pockets all over and wear into the woods when it got cold. That one was interesting. I hope that vendor's not at the show.
Well, I guarantee you this one isn't because we also had a diaper company wanted to.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, so you can go in your pants while you're up in your tree stand, not have to climb down.
Yeah. Adult diapers. They don't realize that they already have that thing. I guess it was
they could call them Depends, don't they?
Yeah. Put them in Osseo camo and sell them for 30% more because they're hunting version or something. So we're on to something there.
I'm David from Wisconsin. What is the worst thing you have ever seen happen in this country?
Seen?
Well, in my lifetime, probably the election of Barack Obama. Now, I'm 100% serious. That guy's just a radical communist. Okay, I'll stop. You're not going to get me fired up. Truly, I think the election of Barack Obama was the worst thing I ever seen in my life in this country.
I got a different answer for that. I used to think it was 9/11, but it's the fact that our country forgot about it. And we've lost, after 9/11, how patriotic this country was, we've lost that. And maybe that was because of that same election, I don't know. But that's the worst thing I've seen I'm not as old as you, but that's the worst thing I've seen. I used to think it was the actual 9/11 terrorist attack, but I think it's how this country has forgotten about that and what that meant to us and where we're at now.
Well, I just got us booted off of YouTube for 30 days. So,
did you really?
With that comment, I promise you.
Oh, okay. I thought you said it already happened.
Bad mouthing Barack Obama will get you banned.
Yeah. So.
Liberal freaks.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. If it's all right with you, I want to end this podcast a little bit different, and you mind if we close with prayer with this one?
That'd be awesome.
All right, let's stand up and take our hats off, guys. Let's say a quick prayer. God, thank you so much for something as silly and fun as deer hunting, uniting such a big group of people together. And we pray that stories like Andrea or stories like Babe or stories like the Ward sisters or maybe a situation in somebody's hometown or church is going to inspire us to do something more that is not only going to glorify you but help our neighbor and further the kingdom and let us be the people that Jesus called us to be every day of the week. God, we thank you for the folks that put the show on. We thank you for the people that came. We pray you give them safety. But above all, no matter what we do today, whether we support Lester's Feet or we support our neighbor, we support a widow, or we work in our church or our community, God, help us be inspired when we leave here today that it's more about deer hunting, it's more than about deer hunting, it's more than about what size buck we shoot, but it's how we can use all things that we do to glorify you. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow night.
God bless. Have a great week.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo, Via Farm Real Estate Company, 360 Hunting Blinds, Victory Chevrolet, Real World Wildlife Products, Matthews Archery, Novix Tree Stands, Gingerich Tree Farm, WildlifeFarming.com, Quiet Cat, and Vortex Optics. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.